It finally happened. The Devils got Jacob Markstrom. Was this a good move by Tom Fitzgerald? And what does the future have in store? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential MIA member, Trey Matthews. I said it in yesterday's episode that I think it's in the best interest for the Calgary Flames to part ways with Jacob Markstrom. And it was widely reported that the New Jersey Devils were one of the front-running teams to land his services. I thought I was going to have to wait until after the Stanley Cup final to see if something would come into fruition. But lo and behold, Tom Fitzgerald got on the phone lines and he nabbed the Devils a goalie. In today's episode, we'll break down the trade in more detail. In the first segment, we'll look at some of the assets that the Devils had to surrender in order to get Markstrom's services. And I will also give you some more background information on Markstrom in general. Then in the second segment, I will play some sound bites from Markstrom's media availability. One of the more interesting things that came out recently was that Craig Conroy spoke to the media, and he said that Markstrom had never requested a trade out of Calgary, and he sort of felt bad for him in that instance. Well, Markstrom spoke on his relationship with Conroy, and I will share that in the second segment. Then in the third and final segment, I've been preaching heavily on this show that just because the Devils get a goalie, it does not mean the job is finished. They still have to fill out their roster, especially since they sacrificed a defenseman, and defense was one of the bigger issues for New Jersey last season. The same can be said for their goaltending, but if you only fix one and not the other, it kind of cancels each other out, and Bryce Salvador spoke on that on social media. But let's focus on something a little more positive. Here's some more background information on the Markstrom deal, courtesy of the Devils PR team. They announced that they acquired Markstrom from the Flames yesterday in exchange for Kevin Bahl, their first-round selection in the 2025 NHL Draft, top 10 protected, and that is crucial. Calgary will be retaining 31.25% of Markstrom's remaining contract. He has this upcoming season and next season remaining. Markstrom joins New Jersey after spending parts of the last 4 seasons with the Calgary Flames. He stands 6'6", weighs 205 pounds. He had a record of 23-2 this past season with a .905 save percentage, a 2.78 goals against average, and had 2 shutouts in 48 games played. Between 2017 and 2023, Markstrom had played in 72% of his club's total games, 327 out of 435. Something tells me he is very durable, which the Devils need more of. And he posted a 2.66 goals against average, a .911 save percentage over that span. In 2021-2022, Markstrom recorded a career-high 37 wins, which ranked 4th in the NHL that season, and posted a career-best 2.22 goals against average and a .922 save percentage. He also posted 9 shutouts that year, which led the entire NHL as he finished second in the Vezina Trophy voting, right behind Igor Shesterkin. Amongst all goaltenders since 2019-2020, he ranks 4th in games played, 256, 4th in shutouts, 17, 6th in save over shots against, 6,594 saves out of 7,256 shots against, and 6th in wins, 138. All right, let's break down this trade. Let's look at what the Devils had to sacrifice. Who won this deal? Well, I'm going to say the Devils won this matter for more reasons than one. Let's look at this from a financial standpoint. The Devils have about $16 million remaining in cap space after this deal, and they are paying Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen a combined $6.05 million. That is a steal, if you ask me, because if you recall, the Canadians retained half of Allen's contract when he was dealt at the deadline. We always talk about how the goalie market is spread thin and sometimes teams have to break the bank in order to secure themselves a legitimate goalie. Not the case for the Devils. They have a starting capable goalie in Markstrom. They have a solid backup in Allen. And once again, they're only paying them a combined $6.05 million. That's pretty damn good, if you ask me. And when looking at what the Devils had to sacrifice, I'm sad to see Kevin Bahl go. He had his moments. He wasn't afraid to throw his body around. I was present for his first ever career fight. He had a good showing in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs last year against the Rangers. And it seemed like he had some decent upside. But of all the defensemen that potentially could have gotten dealt away, he is the odd man out. John Marino, Jonas Siegenthaler, they have modified no trade clauses. Dougie Hamilton has a cap hit of $9 million for the next 4 seasons. He also has a no movement clause. He wasn't going anywhere. Shimon Nemeth and Luke Hughes, the highly touted defensemen for Devils, they're not going anywhere. And I know I said that Tom Fitzgerald sort of has to try to keep his defense intact and just add more to it. But if it meant getting a goalie at that sort of price, I guess you have to make the exception in this sort of aspect. And that first round selection in next year's draft, top 10 protected, really that's a win-win for New Jersey, because if they have another poor performance, then they can sort of tank to secure themselves a top 10 selection. Or if they have a good year and find themselves back in the playoffs, they're not going to care about that draft pick. Here's an example. What happened at around this time last year? We were fast approaching the draft, but no one was really talking about it for the Devils. They didn't have a first-round selection due to the Timo Meier trade, and they also acquired Tyler Toffoli from the Flames, ironically, around this time last year. They also re-signed Jesper Bratt to a lengthy extension. The Devils were preoccupied with trying to build a playoff-caliber roster versus just looking at the draft, and a draft pick that they selected was Lenny Haminaho, but I haven't really heard many people talk about Haminaho and what his potential or his ceiling might be. And he did pretty well during development camp from what I saw, but it just goes to show you that if the Devils are back in the playoffs, they're not really going to care about the draft, and they still have their 10th overall selection this year. They can either use it to select a prospect, or they can use it in some other trade scenario and get another highly touted player. It was rumored that Tom Fitzgerald is not only looking for a goalie, but he's looking for a top 6 forward, a bottom 6 forward, a top 4 defenseman, and a bottom 4 defenseman. He's going to have to search for a bottom 4 defenseman now since Kevin Bahl is no longer on the roster. But I think for the Flames, what you're going to get from Kevin Bahl, you're going to get a stay-at-home defenseman. I don't think Bahl has as much upside as Sharangovich. I said for Sharangovich, he's a little inconsistent, but he still has a lot of potential. He can contribute on the power play, the penalty kill. He snags himself electrifying goals. He's pretty quick. And I said if you develop him the right way, then maybe you could get something out of him. I had my doubts, but look what Sharangovich is doing in Calgary. I don't think that's going to be a similar circumstance for Bahl. I think at best he's more of a filler defenseman type of person, but he knows how to play his role. That's the one thing I'll say. And that was on full display during the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he showed snippets of it, but if we're being completely honest, he took a couple steps back this year. So when looking at this deal, the Devils, they saved themselves some money. They didn't have to sacrifice someone like Alexander Holtz for Jacob Markstrom. They didn't have to sacrifice their 10th overall pick. I think this was a pretty good deal for Tom Fitzgerald, and I think the Devils learned their lesson from the Corey Schneider fiasco, because if that pick lands at number 9 come next year, then it goes back to the Devils, and maybe they could draft a player that reminds them of Bo Horvat. But in all honesty, this is not Corey Schneider trade 2.0. What does the future hold? Well, we'll talk about that a little later in the episode. But before we continue, let me tell you about Game Time. I've actually used the Game Time app before to purchase myself some baseball tickets recently. I need to see Shohei Ohtani play in person. Last minute deals, save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Flash deals, save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Zone deals, save even more when you choose a section like Game Time choose the seats. All-in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, get a good view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, the tandem this season is going to be Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen. Here's what Markstrom had to say about that sort of tandem and how it's going to work. Take a listen.
I don't know him on a personal level, but I had players that I play with and play with him, and that you always ask about how the goalie is, and then obviously we're the same draft, and I think we were picked 31 and 32 if I'm not mistaken. He was going to St. Louis and I went to Florida, but it's exciting. I got a text from him. Text from him already, and I'm excited. I think throughout my career it's important that both goalies push each other and enjoy each other's battle with each other, and that's how you build and you become a better goalie. And that's on and off the ice of making the team better too, to work together. And I think Jake is a great goalie, and I can't wait to work with him and try to win as many games as possible.
I'm actually excited for it because Jake Allen performed decent second half of the year when he was dealt to New Jersey. And I said, maybe getting a change of scenery and just getting out of Montreal was what Allen needed. And now for Markstrom, I literally just said in the first segment, he finished second in the Vezina Trophy race during the 2021-2022 season. Maybe he's not like Linus Ullmark and actually won it, but Markstrom is still a solid choice if you ask me, and he's durable. He's capable of playing in a lot of games, and he's been around the block before. I'm looking forward to it. And now let's look at what he had to say about his no movement clause and ultimately why did he settle with New Jersey. Take a listen.
I think, you always look at the hockey perspective, and, that's like, do you feel like the team can win? And when that's a yes, everything else comes pretty easy. And then obviously, New Jersey and Tom really made a push for me. And, when somebody wants you to come play for that team, it makes you feel good. And, it doesn't take much more than that for me to get excited and want to jump on the ship and be a part of it and hopefully sail it in the right direction. I think that the team has something really good going on, and you look at the players and the roster and the skill set and everything they have there, and then obviously they really wanted most of you guys knew they made a push, and it was a lot of talk throughout the year last year, and nothing happened there, and then this after the season it kind of picked up again. So it was obviously they really wanted me to come, and it's it's always exciting to join a group and a team and an organization like New Jersey Devil who has a lot of history, and I know a bunch of players who played there and they absolutely love it. So can't wait to make it my home.
If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. This Devils team, when fully healthy, they're a very good unit. And I said, regardless of who's going to be behind the bench, regardless of what happens, this Devils team, they still have their core, and their window is just opening. I don't think it's going to be closing anytime soon. And all they needed is just some more capable defenders and also a legitimate goalie, someone who has a better track history compared to someone like Vitek Vanecek, Capo Kakinen, and also Akira Schmid. The playoffs are a different animal. And I think Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen will be up for the challenge if the Devils do make it to the playoffs. We'll talk more about this in the third segment, but for anyone who's complaining about the deal, you need to remember what the goal is going into this season. All right. Markstrom also spoke on his relationship with Craig Conroy and how the trade circumstances were panning out. And I found his response somewhat interesting, considering what Conroy recently said in the media. Take a listen.
Craig's is an unbelievable guy, and he, for me too, it's a difficult position, but I have an agent who I trust and, kind of let him do most of the talking for me, and just, that started last year, and just let me play hockey, which, that helps. And then I got off the phone. Connie called me right when it was done today, and wish me good luck. So there's no bad blood there.
Well, it's nice to see that Markstrom didn't hold any ill feelings towards Conroy and how they were handling a circumstance, but I think it was quite evident that he wanted out of Calgary. And I said the best way to predict future behavior is relevant past behavior. And I didn't care what Conroy was saying in the media. The writing was on the wall. Matthew Tkachuk, no longer with the team. Johnny Gaudreau, same thing. Chris Tanev, Nikita Zadorov, Tyler Toffoli, and now Jacob Markstrom. And just to add on to that, Sam Bennett is also with Matthew Tkachuk with the Panthers in the Stanley Cup final. I don't know how Flames fans feel about Sam Bennett, but I just wanted to put that out there. It hasn't been easy in Calgary, with all due respect. And I think Markstrom saw where the organization was heading to. And I said it in the prior episode, which is for the Flames, they had no choice but to deal him away, because the longer you sit on this trade, the lower his value goes. And they got a first-round draft pick, albeit if the Devils absolutely have a crap show and they're tanking, Flames fans do not root for that. Otherwise, that top 10 protected pick is going right back to New Jersey if they land like the 5th overall pick or something like that. But just that's worst case scenario. The point I'm just trying to say is that it's been somewhat intriguing seeing that Markstrom and his name was brought up in trade circumstances the last few months, and the Devils were somehow linked to him, and they got their guy. They got a goalie, and they didn't have to break the bank to get that goalie. But I'm curious to see how Calgary is going to unfold these next few seasons. But I liked Markstrom's answers. It was nice to see that he spoke fondly of New Jersey, and he also mentioned that he kept in contact with Tyler Toffoli, and he said that Toffoli enjoyed being in New Jersey. Unfortunately, they just couldn't come to an agreement with an extension, and I'm sure Toffoli wanted some sort of stability since he's been a bit of a journeyman, but no hard feelings between Toffoli and New Jersey, and I'm glad that he sort of enticed Markstrom's decision to ultimately waive his no movement clause to play with New Jersey, because getting a goalie, that was essential for Tom Fitzgerald. Okay. It's been evident that the Devils needed a goalie. And now they're sort of getting closer to where people want them to be. And here's what Markstrom had to say about being sort of like that big puzzle piece. Goaltending was a need, not a want. It's been an issue since Tom Fitzgerald took over. It's been a revolving door, and the Devils have been playing musical chairs when it comes to goalies. Here's what Markstrom had to say about sort of being a big role in what the Devils need moving forward.
My position is important. Goaltending is important, and I feel like when you're playing on another team, it's tough to follow what's going on, around the league with everything. But it's it's an important position, and I the pressure I have on myself is every time you lace your skates up, you want to win the hockey game. You want to be that difference maker, which as a goalie, you have a chance to do that every night. And I think that challenge, that's what, gets me up every morning in the gym, and it makes me want to come into the rink and work hard and, try to get better. And I still think that I have, I still haven't reached my top as how good I can play. I still feel like I'm learning every day. And I feel like this was a great step.
All right. They got a goalie. That's great. But here's what Bryce Salvador put out on social media. He said, with Big Baller being traded, Big Baller being Kevin Bahl, you have to think the Devils have a big, gritty D-man or two next on their radar. Can't go into the season with all skill and no snarl on the back end. And as my buddy Jersey Joe would say, colleague of mine over at Pucks and Pitchforks, recurring guest on this show, Kevin Bahl was sort of the epitome as to what a Sasquatch player is. He brings the aggressiveness. He knows how to throw his body around. And we saw that in the playoffs last year. And yes, he did take a step backwards. But like I said, when the Devils lost one of their defensemen, no matter how good or bad, it really hurt their depth in terms of who do they put in. When Dougie Hamilton went down with his injury, the Devils didn't get any better, if you ask me. And a lot of people said that they would get better because Dougie Hamilton wasn't good defensively. At the end of the day, you need a lot of depth assets in order to have a successful roster. And I think the Devils learned that the hard way. And Bryce is absolutely right. The Devils need to continue to add to their blue line. You just lost Kevin Bahl, but you got a goalie. However, that's not going to be enough to get you to the Stanley Cup or to get you far in the playoffs in general. You need to have a collective team in front of you. And if your defense is weak, then good goaltending, it's just going to go to waste. I'm happy that the Devils got Jacob Markstrom. Don't get me wrong. But the job is not finished. And I hate to be that guy, but it's true. The Devils really need to focus on adding more defensemen to their roster. Who's going to replace Kevin Bahl now? I really hope it's not Seamus Casey. That's going to make things worse. Find someone in the free agency market that can bring physicality and aggressiveness, or you can look in the trade market because you might find some under-the-radar type assets, and we'll talk more about that in a future episode. But going back to Bryce's point, now that you lost Kevin Bahl, what does your blue line look like? All right, Dougie Hamilton, Jonas Siegenthaler, John Marino, Shimon Nemitz, and Luke Hughes. You need to add a few more options to the table. As proven, Siegenthaler and Marino, they're decent, not spectacular, but once they play their roles the correct way, they really do help this Devils team, as proven during the historic season. And then Nemitz, Hughes, and Hamilton, they're not going to help you much defensively. Great offensively, but it's going to be wash, rinse, and repeat in terms of how many odd man rushes or open breakaways the Devils allow, because those three defensemen, they're not going to play all that aggressive. They're more focused on the offensive side of things. Get a defensive-minded defenseman who isn't afraid to play physical. And I think Curtis McDermott is going to be used as a forward more than a defenseman, considering what his role was with the Devils last season. All right. The future plan for the Devils. A lot of people are complaining, saying, like, why didn't they get UC Saros? Why didn't they get Linus Ullmark? The reality of it is, if you get UC Saros and Linus Ullmark, they're going to become UFAs before you know it. Then you're really going to have to break the bank in order to keep them here. And keep in mind, Nemitz and Hughes, they're still on their entry-level contracts. Dawson Mercer needs a contract this year. And you have a few players that are signed long-term, and you have a few other players who are decent role players, but they have a say in how they want to be utilized in trade discussion if that's the avenue you decide to take. I've been heavily talking about it on this show. Saros and Ullmark, their contracts would have been way too expensive if the Devils wanted to re-sign them. And that can really put them into a snafu. This upcoming year for the Devils, their goal is to get back into the playoffs. 2 years from now, we'll see what happens. But for right now, with Markstrom and Allen, get back to the playoffs and add more to your defense and get a bottom six forward. And then that's the perfect offseason for New Jersey. 2024, 2025, playoffs or bust. 2025, 2026, go even further. Maybe you can get to the Stanley Cup. I don't know. I'm not a psychic. Did anyone 2 years ago thought that the Stanley Cup final would consist of Edmonton and Florida? I don't think so. But that's where I stand with Jacob Markstrom. He is getting older, and he won't be here long term. But he's a good fix to have, and I don't think people should be complaining about him all that much. He's still a very good goalie, and the Devils didn't have to sacrifice much to get his services. Let me know what you guys think. What do you think of Jacob Markstrom? Are you happy with the deal? If not, what should the Devils have done instead? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.